Testing sound. Testing sound.
Hi Oakview families, welcome. My name is Charlotte McNeill and I am the literacy specialist here at Oakview. I have the most rewarding job of anyone because part of my day is spent providing intervention to our students and the other part is spent helping teachers plan and modeling lessons in the classroom in order to build capacity so that we're all using best practices across the building. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Hopefully you added to our word cloud as you were joining. If not, we will pause for a minute so that you can participate. All right, so throughout our workshop today, there's going to be times when I ask you to respond to questions that I'm going to ask about things that we're learning. There will be a link posted in the chat, so please click on it and don't hesitate to participate. Also, we're going to be sharing the links of some of the items and materials that are demonstrated in today's workshop. We'll start by talking about reading strategies for students at the primary level. And then finally, we'll move on to some strategies that support our upper elementary readers. So let's go ahead and get started. So before we begin, I really would like for you to click on the link in the chat and just type in an area of support that you feel you need the most when you are helping your child at home with reading and writing. So rank the areas in which you feel you need help while supporting your reader. Phonics, comprehension, choosing just right books, and having resources, and simply motivation. So phonics got the most votes, and comprehension and choosing the right books were just a little bit behind in second place. So thank you for providing that feedback because that's going to help determine where we go within this workshop. So first, let's talk about the importance of reading every night at home. So there's a reason that we encourage children and families to read at least 20 minutes a day. Look at student A. Student A reads 20 minutes a day. You can see how many minutes that equates to within a school year and approximately the number of words that child encounters and learns about. Okay, look at student B. Student B reads 5 minutes a day. Okay, so better than nothing, right? But look to how many words it equates to, which is much less than student A. Student C reads for only 1 minute a day, and you can see how many words that child is exposed to. So ask yourself, which child is going to be the better reader? This is why we encourage that 20-minute time at night, and that can be with you, the parent, or it can be independently. But it's so important that we build in and protect that time each day. All right, moving on. Before you can begin helping your child with the reading process, it's good to understand the science behind it. So there are 5 domains of reading. The first one is phonemic awareness. The second is phonics. And phonemic awareness and phonics are not the same. Phonemic awareness is the child's ability to understand that each word is made up of sounds, whereas phonics is actually knowing which letters to write to make those sounds. The third domain is the third domain is vocabulary, and then the fourth is fluency. And I want to reiterate, fluency is not just fast reading, word calling. It's reading it like the character would say it. It's pausing at punctuation correctly, having intonation, and reading with expression. That's what fluency is all about. And the first 4 domains are actually what lead up to that 5th and final domain of comprehension. That is our ultimate goal for our children. So the phoneme piece, vocabulary, and fluency, all that has to be solid and in place before the comprehension can happen. All right, so now that you've learned a little bit about the 5 domains of reading, click the link in the chat and we're going to see if you can say them back to me. What are the 5 domains of reading? Okay, phonemic awareness is 1. Phonics, vocabulary, fluency, comprehension. You guys rock. Okay, so now let's talk about some simple reading strategies that we can provide for our students in our primary grades. So the first thing that we do is at a very early age, we want to empower our children to know how to pick a just right book. So this is something we start teaching them in kindergarten, and we call it the rule of 5. So when our children go to the library, we basically teach them how to choose a book that they think they want to read, and they hold up their hand. They open the book to any page and they begin reading. If the child misses one word, okay, they hold up the thumb, 1 finger. If they keep reading and they miss another word, okay, that book is still okay. It's an okay choice. If they continue reading and they miss 3 words total, that might be a book that they can read somewhat on their own, but might need some help from a grown-up. And then, of course, if they get to 4 or 5 words that they don't know how to read, that's probably a book they need to put back. Now, they could check it out if they want it to be a book that you read with them at night. But for a book that we want them to read independently, we really don't want to go past the 3 missing words, so past 3 fingers, because we really don't want our children to reach that level of frustration in reading. We want them to be excited and feel good at it and feel confident. So keeping that rule of 5 in mind is key. Okay, so when you're reading with your beginning reader, the first thing that you'll do is you're going to take a picture walk. This is simply just viewing the book before ever reading a word. This is a strategy that is powerful even in the upper grades because it starts building background knowledge. The children are viewing the pictures, they're kind of getting a heads up or a glimpse of what the book is going to be about, and instantly that starts generating some conversation. It starts making them think, okay, maybe this happened to me before, or this reminds me of another book I've read. Okay, So you can talk and make predictions about what's going to happen in the book based on that picture walk. You also want to try to model and encourage them to track print, which we will talk about later, but that's simply one-to-one matching. So showing your child that as you're reading from left to right on the page, you're tracking each word with your finger under it. You talk about the story as you read. You say, hey, what do you think is going to happen next before I turn the page? Or you say, what does this story remind you of? And the last thing is reading that story over and over and over, because that's how we build confidence and that's how we build fluency. Okay? On the next slide, we're going to talk about asking the right questions when you're reading with your young child. So first, there's questions that you ask before you ever start reading, very similar to the ones that you're talking about in the picture walk. So you might ask, what do you think this story is going to be about? Do you think there's going to be a problem? Does this story make you think of anything? What are you wondering right now? Those are all questions that kind of activate that brain and kind of give them some feed-forward information in getting ready for what they're about to encounter in the text. While they're reading, you can stop, and I wouldn't stop too often because you don't want to break up the fluency or the pacing, but every now and then have a stopping point where you might say, okay, how do you feel about this story so far? Do you have any questions? Why do you think the character did that or said that? And then once the story's finished, you can ask some simple recall questions such as, what was the title? Who were the characters? What was the problem? What was the solution? But the powerful piece to the after questions is when you dig deeper and you ask them to kind of connect it with what they've been learning, or connect it with a past experience, or connect it with another text, or they kind of might decide what they think a better ending would be, or they kind of dig into the character a little more and talk about the character and the way they are and the way they interacted, and kind of talking through the actions of the character and kind of weighing those out. So just talking deeper after the story is key in helping that comprehension piece get stronger as our readers grow. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is different ways to read with your child. So the first is, of course, reading aloud. This is many times what you're doing when you're reading that bedtime story. You're reading aloud, you're making fun voices, you're asking questions throughout, you're showing, one-to-one matching, you might be picking out specific things in the story. That's the part that's fun for all of us. The second is echo reading, and this is, you would complete your picture walk, discuss what you think might happen, predicting, you're tracking print, but this is a little different because this is where you read the sentence and then they repeat it. So you read and then they read the same exact sentence. Then you read another sentence and they read it after you. This is modeling phrased and fluent reading. The third way to read with your child is choral reading. This is actually one way that we read a lot in our classrooms in the primary grades. They read together as a whole group, practicing the fluency, the intonation, the expression. And then the final way is the follow me. And this is one of my favorites, but it does take a little practice. So the parent would begin reading the first part of the sentence, and then they would decide where is a natural break to stop reading, and the child would continue on. And so the goal is for it to almost seem like there was never a break, for it to just be completely seamless. But it's tricky because the child has to be paying attention to what you're reading and know when to step in at the right moment. Okay, time for another check-in. So click the link in the chat and you are going to answer a true or false statement. Echo reading is when you and your child read together at the same time. Is this true or is it false? Okay, so some people answered true, and most people answered false. So drum roll, the answer is false. So remember, echo reading is when the parent reads the sentence and then the child reads the same exact sentence afterwards. Choral reading is when you are reading together as a group at the same time, the same pace. Tricky question. Okay, moving on to concepts of print. So I'm going to demonstrate this in just a moment, but I do want to go over what that means. So concepts of print is just understanding a book, understanding written text and the parts that make that up, such as the cover of the book, the title page, the author and illustrator, a single page and understanding how to turn that page, a single word, being able to recognize punctuation and capital letters and lowercase letters, and of course tracking print, which I mentioned earlier. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you tracking print simply means where to start, which is of course the beginning word on each page on the left, where to end, so you would scroll to the right, which way to go, left to right, and then one-to-one matching, and you want them to point crisply. So I brought out one of our nonfiction books called Tadpoles, and I have a couple of things I want to show you that are just so fun. So I have these little wands. You can get them. We're going to put some links to these types of resources in the chat so that if you want to buy them, you can, or you might have something that you can use at home that's very similar. I tell a lot of families, get a pencil with a fun eraser, and that serves the same purpose. But if you have a child who's really struggling with one-to-one matching, give them something bigger to hold on to. Another fun resource are these monster fingers, or witch fingers, whichever one you want to call them, but this is the perfect time of year to get these at Target or Walmart or Amazon, and they're just so fun. So of course you would talk about the front cover and the back cover, the title, but really the most important thing is when you get within that text, showing them what to do. So this would be your left to right, and understanding you're going from top to bottom. And this is what's called a return sweep. It's when you get to the end of that line and you sweep around and go back to the beginning of the second line. You might want to talk about spacing. Have them count how many spaces are in the sentence. You might want to frame a sight word, so the, and say, hey, how many letters are in the sight word the? You might want to have them point to the capital letter or a lowercase letter. You might want to point out the period. You might want them to count how many vowels are in the sentence. Okay, so these are just all really good questions that are so easy to just ask in the moment, and it really helps your child understand how text works and where to look, because that's the first thing that we have to establish in reading, is learning how to look at print and knowing what to do with it. Okay, so that is concepts about print and helping your child with that at home. Okay, the next thing I want to show you, the next slide, is just a list of reading resources. So we are so blessed with technology these days, and yes, we want to encourage reading to happen within paper books, but technology is a tool that we have. So I've listed out a couple of sites that some are free, some might need a subscription, but these sites would deal with phonics and comprehension, and some of the sites actually read the story to the child, and they have the words printed under so that the child can practice following along. And then others, it will read to them and there's no words to follow along. Others, it's not going to read to them. It's going to be left to the child to simply put in that work. Some of these are sites that we use at school, so your child might be familiar with some, and then others you might need to sit down and kind of walk them through it. So hopefully that's helpful as you're trying to find some more engaging things to do with them at home. All right, moving on to sight words. So sight words are the same thing as high frequency words. You will hear them talked about it both ways. Some teachers even still call them popcorn words, but they're words that students are supposed to know quickly. And unless those sight words are firm and in place, the fluency piece and the comprehension piece are difficult to get. So the goal is to get those sight words down pat so that the fluency is built up, and then that ultimately leads to the goal of understanding what we're reading, which is comprehension. So I'm not going to read all of these, but there are a couple that I did want to point out. Of course, popsicle words. What a fun way after they have a little popsicle, write their sight words on it, and just kind of keep those in a jar or a bag and pull them out every now and then and have them read them quickly and automatically. Finger painting. That's always really fun. And kids love to get messy when they can. So let's have purposeful messy, right? Another fun one, and this is if you have children who are who like to be active, let's just say it that way. We have something, it's called a snowball fight. And so basically you take paper and you write a sight word on it and you crumble it up, and then you have a snowball fight in your living room. And if it hits you, you open it and you have to read the sight word quickly. So that's a fun, easy game to practice sight words, and it's also using things that you instantly have around the house. Writing words on a chalkboard is also something that we encourage. There's something to be said about the drag of the chalk against the chalkboard that really helps provide that multi-sensory piece for the student as they're writing. This is something that I pull out, and it's called a water board. And simply you get a little pen, you put water in it. It does not leak, so that's good. But you could simply practice, your letters. For some of our kindergartners who are struggling with letter formation, you could practice your sight words. And so it instantly shows up once you get it wet. And then I would say within 3-4 minutes it dries and you see no remnants of it. So this is a really fun tool to have. And again, just like with the chalk, this water pen has a specific drag to it that really helps solidify those motions with the student as they're practicing their letters and their words. Okay, now let's move on to a check-in. So we just got finished talking about sight words or high frequency words. So your next question is true or false. Sight words are phonetically regular words that can be sounded out easily. So true or false? Can sight words be sounded out? Okay, so this was a tricky one too. Thank you for participating. So technically, sight words are words that usually cannot be sounded out. For example, V. You're not going to read that word t-eh. But there are other words like at, is, can. Yes, those can be sounded out technically. So it was just kind of a tricky question. So good job. All right, moving on to vocabulary. And this is the piece that I'm so excited about sharing with you today. All right, so vocabulary is just one of those things that that's what helps our kids dig deeper into their reading. And the first thing, you can see I've got like 10 activities and strategies listed on the slide. I want to bring out number 2, which is board games. If you have Scrabble or Boggle or Bananagrams, those are fantastic ways to support vocabulary and having some conversation around what words mean, but also helping with some of that phonemic awareness too, as they're trying to build the words off of others. The other one that I want to point out is the word jar. So simply, if you look here, I actually just have an old coffee can that I decorated with scrapbook paper. And I basically just picked out a couple of vocabulary words that I know students in various grade levels are working on, such as, scurry or contemplate. What you could do so many things with this activity, but you could put a bunch of words in the jar or, coffee can, whatever, and pick one out each day and practice saying the word, talk about what it means, see if you can use it in a sentence correctly, see how many times during the day you can use this word, talk about synonyms or antonyms, just to help build some conversation and some understanding of the words that they are encountering at school and within text. So that's a fun use for that. Another thing that I want to show you are these organizers. And I'm going to tell you, I purposefully did not print them because I wanted just to show that these types of activities can simply be done with a piece of paper and a pencil or a marker or a pen. It doesn't have to be pretty and fancy and colorful, because that's not the point of all this. The point is to dig deeper and to really target the needs of our kids. So let's say, for example, your child is reading and they come to a word that they don't know. This is a simple organizer or map that you could draw them. You're going to put the word in the middle, and then on this top left box, they would write the definition, what the word means, in their own words. Okay, underneath that, they would write a sentence where they use that word meaningfully. On the top right, it's divided into 2 sections. One where they could list synonyms, so words that mean the same thing, and then antonyms, words that are opposite. Again, this helps them develop a well-rounded understanding of this word. And then final would be a picture that they could draw or sketch. This just kind of helps, again, bring all of that conversation back around so that they have a full understanding of what the word means. Another type of organizer or map that I want to share with you looks like this. And this is dealing more with understanding root words or base words and how that determines the meaning of the word. So you can see I left a couple blank so that you can see the new word goes at the top. The definition is under the bottom. But my base word is graph. I also wrote that as a noun, that means like a diagram or a drawing or an image. And then it's as a verb, it means to plot or trace. So I decided to find a couple of words that have graph in them. So graphic, I wrote down the definition. I did the same thing for cartographer and then autograph. These are words that our children would encounter in text, and if they didn't have an understanding of the root word, the base word, it would be really hard for them to determine how that affects the meaning of all these new words. So it's very important that we kind of help the kids kind of piece like an onion effect. Like we want to show them the layers to vocabulary and understanding. Okay, so hopefully those are 2 organizers that you can use, especially with your older readers, as they encounter words that they don't understand completely. Okay, the next thing I want to move on to, I want to show you 10 word games. Of course, I'm not going to go through all of these. Some of them are self-explanatory. But the first thing that I want to show you are magnetic letters. This is something we use all the time. Now, I have a magnetic whiteboard that's also a dry erase board. You can easily find these. If you don't have one of these, you can use a cookie sheet at home, you know, something that will have that magnets can stick to. But basically, what I want to demonstrate here is how we teach our young readers to understand how words work and how we can substitute or delete a phoneme, which is, of course, the visual representation of the sound, how we can do that to get new words. So as the teacher or the parent, you're going to want to kind of already make a list of the words that you want your child to build so that you kind of have that on hand. It's hard to do it on the fly. I suggest only giving your child the letters that they need. It can be very overwhelming for a young reader to have 26 letters to have to pilfer through. Okay? So basically I would say, Susie, I want you to make the word at. So she'd make at. And then I would say, okay, what do you need to add to make it say cat? So hopefully she'd pull up the C. All right, I want you to turn cat into can. So she would hear that the ending changed. Turn can into fan. Okay, so you can kind of see where I'm getting. If your child is struggling with this, then slow them down and say, you know, say the word slowly and touch where the sound is different. So for example, if they made the word fan and I want them to turn it into pan, they would say pan. And then I would say touch where the sound is different. And hopefully they would touch here. That lets them know, and it lets you know before they start moving things that they're on the right track. Okay? So those are just some examples as far as building words with young readers. Now, for our readers who are beyond that, and they are writing and spelling multisyllabic words, let me show you how we help them with that. So I'm going to give you the word magnet. What we encourage our older readers to do is simply clap the syllables. Magnet. They've got to understand how the word breaks down. And then from there, we take it syllable by syllable and we think about what we hear. So mag. And again, you would want to give them the letters that they need and they would build it. Mag. So magnet. So here comes the next syllable. Notice how I left a space right here. That is to just reiterate the fact that this word has 2 syllables, 2 parts. Once they make it, you can have them push it over to make it one word, like they would see it within text. And something you could do after this is mix it and then have them build it again. And once again, you're going to have to remind them to break it into syllables. Magnet. Okay? That makes them slow down and actually think about what they hear. So that is the key to helping them spell tricky, tricky words. Okay. We're going to move from, oh, nope, I forgot one more thing. This is just a fun game if your child likes card games. You can play memory with sight words. Okay, so you would write the sight word on 2 cards basically, so you have 2 copies, and then you would just lay them down. Okay, I'm going to put them in different places. You might want to use colored cards or a pencil so that you can't see through. But anyways, basically, you know how to play this game. You'd lift it up, they would read the word, and then they would try to find it. Nope, that doesn't match. So then they would go again. Just another fun way to make sight words exciting for them. You could also, for older readers, you could write the vocabulary word on one card and write the definition on another, and then they have to match the word with the meaning. That would be another fun way to do that too. So there's all kinds of things you could do. All right, now I'm ready to move on. Okay, so that's a lot of information about helping your primary reader. Now we're going to shift and we're going to talk about our upper elementary intermediate readers. Okay? These are most likely the children who have word decoding down pat, and they're ready to really dig deeper into that comprehension piece. So on the next several slides, I have once again some easy organizers or maps or strategies with materials that you already have at home that can help them slow down and think about what they're reading. So I'm going to give you 7 of the best comprehension strategies to use with our children. The first one is activating and using background knowledge. So you can see this is what we call a KWL chart. The K stands for what I know, what I want to learn, and what I learned. Okay? So you're going to give your child a book, and then they're going to take a quick picture walk, kind of look through it, and then they're going to list out what do you already know. So for example, if I pulled out my book about frogs that I showed earlier, I'm going to list what are some things we already know about frogs. In the middle column, I'm going to list, okay, what are some things I want to learn about them? Some things I'm interested in knowing. Then of course you read the book. And then in the third and final column, you would list, okay, what did I learn from this text? So that's just one easy way to build the background knowledge and the front loading that's needed before you read, making them stop and kind of set goals for what they want to gain from this book, and then what they learned, and kind of bringing that back around full circle. The second best comprehension strategy is generating and asking questions. And this is simply through sticky notes. This is a strategy that we use a lot in the classrooms too. We give them a couple of sticky notes, and as they're reading, they stop and jot if they made a connection with themselves or another book. They stop and jot and ask a question if they don't understand something. They might jot down a word that they read that they don't know what it means and they need to dig a little deeper. They might jot down a funny part and write about why they laughed and chuckled about it. So those sticky notes are key in making them stop. Now, if you have a child who just wants to read right through, they don't want to stop and take the time to think about anything, then you as the parent look at that book, that chapter, and decide where is a stopping place for my reader. You go ahead and say, when you get to the end of page 12, I want you to write on this sticky note if it made you think of anything, or if you had a question. So you might have to kind of be the boss and say, listen, you're going to stop right here and we're going to talk about what you read before we go any further. Okay? The next best comprehension strategy I want to show you is about inferences. So when we read, authors do not always provide complete descriptions of or explicit information about a topic, a character, a setting, or event. So that leaves us, the reader, to evaluate and draw conclusions from what is being offered in the text. So this is a organizer that you could, it looks a lot like the KWL chart, but basically they would record what they read, the text cues, like the evidence in the text. They would write down their schema, which is when they bring their background knowledge, things that they already know about and have experienced, and they place that with what they read. And then of course that develops an inference. Okay, predicting is the fourth best comprehension strategy. And this is when you connect existing knowledge to new information from the text to gain an understanding. This is an easy, like, T-chart almost. They're reading, they stop, they write what they predict, but then this is the key. They have to prove why they predicted that, so provide the evidence. And parents, this is what helps prepare them for that TDA, that text-dependent analysis work that we do for all, for state testing and all that good stuff. This is what helps prepare them for going back into the text to find the proof. They have to support their thinking. The fifth best comprehension strategy is summarizing. And this is simply when they pull all the information together that they read and they have to restate it in their own words. Sometimes teachers say summarize, sometimes teachers say retell. The two words mean the same thing. But we have a lot of children who understand the big picture of the story, but when it comes down to explaining like the nitty-gritty details, they gloss right over them. So this is another organizer that will help them know kind of what bits of information are most important and pick those out. So this is a strategy I use a lot in intervention groups with older readers. It's someone wanted, but so then. So it's a very easy way to get a quick retell of what happened in the story. And then basically they would take those pieces that they picked out and of course add words in to make it a complete sentence. And they would kind of prepare a summary. Okay, the sixth one is visualizing. This is always a fun one, especially for our artistic children. But this is when you create a mental image of what you read. And in the classroom, we explain this as you're making a movie in your brain. So this organizer allows the student to write down details from the text, but then they're going to draw a picture and create something that is a movie or an image of what happened. And this just helps, it helps that the content of that book just resonate with them so much more. The last and final comprehension strategy is comprehension monitoring. And that's simply knowing when they're reading, knowing when they didn't understand something and they need to stop right then and do what we call a fix-up strategy to repair where the breakdown happened. So this is an example of a simple 4-square organizer you could draw on plain paper where as they're reading, okay, this didn't make sense, so I need to reread. And they might want to jot down what page that was or a phrase that will remind them of where they didn't understand. Okay, after they take the time to kind of determine that spot, then they're going to think deeper about it and record what's happening. There might be a specific word that they don't know. They're going to write that word. Okay, then they're going to stop and think, okay, what did I learn from this? This might be a good strategy to do a page at a time with older readers, maybe even a paragraph depending on how compacted it is with information. But the key for the comprehension piece is, of course, slowing them down and making them think about what they're reading and helping them understand that when you don't get it, you need to stop. Don't just keep going and plow right through it. Stop and think. So those are the 7 best comprehension strategies. And this actually brings us to the end of our workshop today. So the final slide is my information, my email, and my number. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. If you need resources or just need me to help you look for some things to send home with your child, again, please let me know. I'm happy to help. Thank you again for tuning in with me today. I hope I provided some good entertainment for your lunch break. And I look forward to hearing from all of you. So everyone have a great afternoon and a fantastic weekend. Bye.